This training video is brought to you by K Alliance. K Alliance provides high-quality instructor-led training videos for desktop, IT, and soft skills. Visit us online at www.kalliance.com to sign up for your free 7-day trial. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and we hope you learned something new. Real videos, real learning, real success.
In this demonstration, we're going to look at the process for configuring and managing disks in Windows Server 2012. Now, a lot has actually changed. We'll be looking at that very shortly. But here, we're just looking at some of the kind of basic management. So we're going to open up Server Manager, and you have access from the Tools menu to the Computer Management Snap-in. Now, the Computer Management Snap-in has or contains the Disk Management Snap-in. You can open that up directly if you would like. That is your kind of traditional graphical utility for managing drives on the system. So we see all the drives laid out. Okay, we've got a system that actually has several additional drives that have not been marked as online. So we'll use one of those to kind of just play around with partitions and see what we can do here. But again, I got to reinstate here that this is the traditional method. Microsoft has a new capability that we're going to look at called storage spaces, which allow you to virtualize storage. That will not be done through this computer management utility. So only use computer management for disk management if you don't plan to use the storage spaces capability. Okay? But that being said, let's look at some of that basic management that we have here. So we'll start with disk 2. Disk 2 is offline, and so first thing I would need to do is bring it online. Okay? Once you bring a disk online, and that would be what would happen essentially if you added a disk. If you add a disk to the system and then you boot the system up, or maybe it's a hot swappable thing, then it's not going to recognize the disk at the start. It's going to be listed as offline, and then I'm going to have to initialize the disk. And it's at the point where I initialize the disk that I'm choosing the partition style that we talked about. So MBR or GPT. Well, since this is only a 32 gig drive, we'll just choose master boot record. GPT is better for drives that are above 2 terabytes. Okay, so now it's listed as a basic disk. It is online, but I've got unallocated space. So I'm going to right click and I can create a new simple volume. Now technically you still do have basic disk, but really you have to use the disk part utility to actually create to create partitions. If you use the disk management utility, you've got new simple volume. And so immediately when you create this, it's actually going to do the conversion for you to dynamic. So if you remember, older systems, it's really not nearly as rigid as what it used to be. So I'm just going to create a volume that's going to use up storage space on this single drive. Okay? We can assign it a drive letter or a mount point. We're going to have to assign it one of those two. A drive letter, it's going to show up as a separate drive. A mount point, it looks like a folder. We'll come back to that. Okay, this is going to be my data store. Do a quick format with NTFS, although you do have the other options, FAT32 and REFS. And we'll click Finish. Okay, so now that immediately shows up. Again, Windows Explorer. Actually, you can cancel that. You can open up Windows Explorer, and now I see Data Store as listed as the F drive. Okay, and if I go to Computer, it is a 31.9 gigabytes. Okay, so that shows up. It's nice and color coded. You do have a couple of options here. If I decided that I wanted to shrink that, go ahead and query for shrink space. And let's say, well, I kind of want to divide it in 2, so I don't want it. I want to have 2 partitions. So you shrink. It's that easy. Now it collapses that. But I mean, obviously that has to do with the amount of data that's actually on the system or on the disk at that point. But at that point, then I can create a volume over here as well. Now, before I do that, let me mark this other disk as online. We'll show a couple of other types of volumes that you've got. So we'll initialize that disk as well. Okay. Now I can right click and now I've got a couple of additional options. Okay. So there are different volume types on dynamic disk, and so a spanned volume, I can create a volume that just takes up space on both drives. Striped is RAID 0, mirrored, a duplicate copy, and you do have the ability to do RAID 5. That's still grayed out because I would have to have 3 disks. Okay, so I'm just going to create a spanned volume. You know, basically I'm saying, okay, we're going to use the first 16 gigs from this disk and then the rest of the space from that disk. Again, we're going to assign it a drive letter. Actually, this time let's do a mount point. So instead of all these additional drive letters, I would actually like this to show up on the F drive as my as a projects, or well, we'll call it departments. Okay, so I want it to be mounted to that folder, and it is departments. We're going to do a quick format. Hit next. And now you have a drive that was just telling me it was going to convert to dynamic disk. It didn't need to do that before because it was just a simple volume. So now you've got a single drive. Interesting. Single drive that is accessible. For some reason the mount point did not stick. So we'd have to go back in and we're going to point it at that folder. And then it should be accessible. Now the difference over here is that now I have an F drive and I have a department shortcut. Now we can see that it's different. I mean, it's a mount point, but it's accessible via F:/departments. That works really well, say on an email server, for instance. You can create a folder that's databases, and it's on the C drive, but it's really a mount point to another physical disk, and then another folder called log files. It's a mount point to another disk. It just simplifies the paths for everything while still giving you the ability to have those separate drives. And so that mount points are very, very useful in that way. Okay, so again, this is the standard management that we would have done. You also have the disk part utility, which is a command line version of disk management. You have the ability to do things in there. Obviously here we had the ability to create RAID volumes, RAID 5, RAID 1, RAID 0. This is all software RAID, not the hardware RAID. And so in general, production environments, production server, we probably aren't going to, we're probably not going to utilize that a great deal, at least the software RAID functionality. So again, this is really more just to give us something to look at. These are the traditional ways to manage disk, and they are still available in Server 2012. But now as we move forward, we're going to look at a brand new feature known as storage spaces. So that's going to complete this demonstration where we looked at some of the standard disk management tasks in Windows Server 2012.
We hope you enjoyed this preview video. Please click on the like button below if you did, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to visit us at www.kalliance.com to sign up for your free 7-day trial today. You could learn a lot in a week.